information and video. All right, and write down 4 facts, okay? What did I just say you had to do for this video?
Write down 4 facts.
4 facts. Okay, some people are very, I can see you're listening, some people can't see you're listening. I think music is still on, hold on. Adele, we don't need you right now. Thanks though. I'm gonna hit the light.
No.
I got it. The first part's kind of slow.
Here's our patient. The patient has received all known antibiotic treatments to no effect. In conclusion, either he is not ill, or we have a new strain of microbes.
Or this could even just be a case of resistance to
Guys, make sure your vote, actually, yeah, keep your homework on your desk. I'll come and check it right now.
antibiotics. Let me explain. When the body is infected by bacteria, it attempts to defend itself in several ways, by increasing its temperature, but mainly by using its immune system. As soon as a foreign body enters the organism, it's detected straight away and alarm bells ring. Lots of white blood cells come along to identify the culprits and get rid of them. But sometimes these defenses are overwhelmed by bacteria. That's when the illness really begins. Luckily, since antibiotics were discovered, we can help patients protect themselves. These drugs destroy most bacteria or create a hostile environment for them. Antibiotics soon became a quick-fix solution. For the slightest scratch, a course of antibiotics. It was so effective in preventing infections from developing that the use of antibiotics increased. They became widely used to treat battery-farmed poultry and pigs. But before long, the illness returns. And antibiotic treatments suddenly stop working. What happened? Well, before bacterial cells divide, they duplicate their genetic material. This material is composed of DNA. Portions of the long molecule can hold precise information on the activity and development of the bacteria. These portions are what we call genes. Each gene is composed of a sequence of 4 elements, called nucleotides, of which 2 are always matched in pairs because they're complementary. As DNA is copied very rapidly, errors in the copy frequently occur. These errors are called mutations. Most of the time, these mutations are of no consequence, but sometimes they can be harmful to the bacteria. However, with such a high number of mutations, some of these copy errors can result in resistance to antibiotics. When in contact with the antibiotic, the resistant bacteria will be the only ones to survive. In fact, the drug will have chosen the resistant strain. And then, since there is no longer any competition for food, the bacteria can multiply very fast. It's exactly like natural selection. Individuals with the most favorable characteristics reproduce more than the others and will be able to continue to evolve. Indeed, with antibiotics,
For that example right there, what was the favorable characteristic? That's not exactly what that example was showing, but that is true. Yeah. All right, what's that word that means it blends in? Thank you, camouflage. That beneficial adaptation was the dark color moths are going to survive because they have a dark appearance and they live in this dark tree environment, so they can camouflage themselves. The the ones that are selected against are which colored moths? The lighter ones or the bright ones. Good. Okay, I haven't checked the middle rows right here for homework. Just keep it on your desk for me. Let's go through a couple of examples of natural selection, the types of natural selection. So I think we're finished here. Yeah, we're good here. So yesterday, and I'll have to put the lights back on because some people get sleepy. Yesterday we talked about the evidences of evolution. What were the 4 types of, maybe there were 4 types, so maybe 4 evidences for evolution. I'll start. Fossils. What else? Anatomy. So what types of anatomy? What are the 2 different structures called? Homologous structures and analogous structures. Okay, so those are 2 opposites. What inside the body? Vestigial structures, ones that remain over time because you inherited them from your ancestors, but they're useless to us. What else other than structure? Huh? The physiological differences, yeah. So like antibiotic resistance is a really good example of physiological differences because the body processes the antibiotics differently, so they're resistant to them. So that's an inside function. What else, like in terms of genetics, maybe? What were the other evidences? Biochemical evidence, thank you. So specifically, most likely, the DNA. One more about development. Embryology, good. Okay, so I have a cool embryology interactive thing. So let's see if you guys can guess the embryo. All right, so looking at that embryo, is it a fish, a dog, a bear, or, oh, darn it. That means I'm clicking it. I'm not clicking it. Or a mouse. Raise your hand if you say fish. Dog. Bear. Mouse. Oh, we have about more mouse here. Okay, let's see. That's right! It's a mouse embryo. Didn't know. Okay, so let's see here. I don't want to... Okay, we can watch the mouse develop. Here it is. Look at the baby mouse. Look at the... Oh, it's got a tail. Well, duh, it's got a tail, actually. We'll let that slide. There's there. Okay, do you see any ears? I see little ears popping up, and it's got little hands coming up. Big eyeball. Still got a tail. Still got a tail. Look at the baby mouse. Look at his little ears. That must have been a head popping up. Okay, and I think that's all I can do. Embryo 2. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Oh, what's that called? Ferret. Ferret. Thank you. I was like, not Seattle. So ferret, lamb, big fat bird, or, and this is just because I'm hovering over it. Or the kangaroo. So what do you guys think? Shout it out. You think it's the fat one? I just guessed. Good job. Whoever said that's a quail. Okay, fat quail. Okay. Watch the quail develop. Here we go. Duh. Duh. Look at this huge. Is that an eye? I can't tell. What is that? Look at this. This is like a little neck. It's like a chicken. Like a huge. Oh my gosh, look how big its head is compared to his body right now. And that's it. That's all I can see. Let's do one more. Embryo 3. So we've got. Oh, you guys can totally tell this is. What is it? Lizard iguana?
Yeah.
Oh, is that wrong? It's not that one. Turtle? Yes. Okay, good. All right. You see the shell, I guess, in the back? That looks so cool. Okay, let's see. Duh. Look at it. It looks so ugly. Look at the turtle. He can't hear me. He has no ears right now. Okay, look at it. There's the shell forming for reals. Okay. Boom. We made a baby turtle. Okay. So, hey, baby turtle.
Are there any more?
No, there's only 3. Okay. Maybe. All right. So we already talked about evolution. How it has to. You have to have natural variation first. So mutations. How are mutations formed? 2 ways. Okay, I'll start randomly and how genetically? What process makes gametes? Not quite. What makes gametes? Meiosis. Okay, what part of meiosis is where crossing over occurs? First phase. Prophase. Okay, so that's how that occurs. That's how variations occur. That's all I want to review is how variations occur. Okay, now variations occur differently based on the type of reproduction that the animal does. Sexual versus asexual. Okay, so we already heard about sexual reproduction. So this is just a compare and contrast. Compare and contrast with me by writing out sexual versus asexual. And let's talk about the differences here. So sexual reproduction is one way of reproducing, whereas asexual is, totally different type here. So sexual reproduction, you can make variations in meiosis 1 through prophase. Asexual, they don't have a meiosis happening. Okay? They don't have that stage where the crossing over can happen. So how do you think they make differences? How do you think they make variations? Maybe mistakes in mitosis. So mistakes are called the what? Mutations. Okay, so mutations during mitosis. Now, Sam just shouted out one really good example of how mutations can occur. What did you just say?
DNA replication.
Okay, so mutations during DNA replication. Well, when does that happen? During mitosis. Which are the phases? Interphase, good. So interphase and DNA replication is when and where that mutation would happen. Okay, so if those mutations happen during meiosis, they're going to be passed on to their gametes. If those mutations happen during mitosis, they're going to be passed on just to the new cells, those identical cells they create. Okay, so all the offspring are going to be, they are getting any kind of mutation. And if that mutation is beneficial, they're going to survive, they're going to reproduce, they're going to pass it on to the babies. If it's bad, if it's a bad mutation, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to die. Are they going to pass those alleles on?
Yes.
No, they're going to die before they reproduce probably. So that gene kind of dies out with the babies. All right, so that's a good review. And let's talk about how, well, let me come back to this. Let's talk about how these alleles are accounted for. Okay, so definitions, and this is very, these definitions, sometimes they make logical sense and sometimes they don't. So I'm going to explain a lot. You guys can write down what you mean here. Remember, you have, some of you guys weren't here yesterday, you have an open note quiz on Monday. So, I mean, take some notes for yourself. Open notes, not open vocabulary, open notes. Okay, so whatever your notes, whatever you take notes on, that's what you'll be using. Okay, so the gene pool is going to be all the genes, all the alleles in a population, right? So, alleles, what were the different versions of alleles you could have? Capital or lowercase, right? So capital or lowercase, I'm going to go big R, little r. That was dominant, and this is recessive. Okay, so in a population, you're going to have a whole lot of dominants and a whole lot of recessives. Sometimes it might be 50-50. So gene pool is just all the alleles, and then the percentages of those alleles, that's called your allele frequency, or your allelic frequency. So that just refers to the percentage of each allele. So if it was even, what would be the percentages? They're even, equal, okay. So it could be, for example, 50% big R, 50% little r, or, it could be different. It could be, let's go different color here. It could be 75% big R, and then what would be little r? 25%. So you could have to actually count up the alleles to determine the allelic frequency. But those words, gene pool and allelic frequency, they go together a lot because they help to define each other. Chandler, keep your head up, please. Disrespectful. So if your allelic frequencies, let's say in your guys' generation, the allelic frequencies were 50-50. But in a couple years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years, hopefully not 30 years because you'd be real old then. Let's say in another generation, your new babies, your offspring, have an allelic frequency of 75-25. Did it change from generation you guys to generation babies? Yes, it did change. So if the allelic frequencies are changing from generation to generation, we have just said change over time. This defines what evolution is. That's the simplest I can make evolution. Change over time. So did change happen over time? Mm-hmm. Yep, sure did. From 50-50 to 75-25. So what is occurring? Evolution. Okay? If it stays 50-50 from generation to generation to generation, is it changing over time? No. So is evolution occurring? No. Okay, so if it's constant, if the frequencies are constant, no evolution. If frequencies are changing, yes, evolution. Does that make sense? Thanks. Thanks, Rashawn. I know it makes sense to Rashawn. Anybody else? Yes? Okay, cool. So how do these frequencies change? Like how do we change from 50-50 to 75-20? Like that doesn't make sense. What can happen is populations can move, things can migrate, things can immigrate. So we call that movement of alleles or movement of genes genetic drift. So who's ever drifted in their car? You know what I'm talking about. You drift. Okay. So drifting just means like your mind's drifting away someplace right now other than genetics and evolution. So it just means that things move around. And then the organisms specifically are what are moving around. And when they move, what do they take with them? Their alleles, their genes. They're taking their bodies with them. So this can be through immigration. What did emigration stand for when we had an E? Organisms moving into the environment or exiting? Out, thank you. That's when organisms exit an environment or a population. Immigration means that they're coming into a population. So the frequencies can change by chance just because the organism's moving around. Thumbs up when you're done here. Okay, cool. All right, so here's a good example of this, and you don't have to write this information down because you just did. But looking at the examples here, this first example, what is the most common gene, or is there a most common gene? It's 50-50, right? So big B, 50%, little b, 50%. The 0.5, just if you multiply by 100, that'll give you percents. All right, so then these rabbits will reproduce, and they make this many rabbits that are brown, and then one. Or I guess no, sorry. This one's a little different because they are brown. I just went down too far. No, I didn't. Here we go. They make different homozygous dominant and heterozygous dominant babies. So you'll see that these are all big B, big B, big B, big B, little b. But when they reproduce, they make big B, and then a couple that are big B, little b. So there's a different number of little b's to big B. So that's why the frequency has changed from 50-50 to 70-30. And then the next generation changes again, and do you see any little b's at all? No. So all of them 100% are homozygous dominant, so then we have 100% big B's, which is what the P right there represents. Yes? Whenever these, when you do Punnett squares, if you put, let's say put this one and this one together, they could have big B, little b, crisscross, or cross them all down. They have a possibility of making heterozygotes, but these can occur more frequently if it's independent for every offspring made. So they just so happen by chance. That's why this is all by chance to make all big B babies. Okay, so that's how genetic drift can happen too by specific animals reproducing. Okay, gene flow. Write down the term gene flow, and I'll really, really simply define it. Okay. Gene flow is similar to genetic drift, and there's not a big difference, but it's more specifically to immigration and emigration than chance. Okay? So the last one, genetic drift, meant that it could be either by immigration or immigration, or just by specific animals reproducing like the rabbits. But this one, gene flow, it means that the genes are actually flowing out of a population or into a population. It's not talking about how they reproduce. It's just saying these animals are moving, and with them they are bringing their genes. So a really good example of this one would be lions, a pride of lions. Because these lions, you can only have one kind of big alpha male, right? And so if you can't have more than one alpha male in a population, what's going to happen to the sons that are born? Where are they going to go? They either die and get killed by the alpha male, what's the head of the lion pride called? The father lion? The king. Mufasa. Okay, we'll say Mufasa. Okay, if Mufasa says, son, Simba, leave, they have to leave. So they go and find another pride, and they take, they're Mufasa and another tribe. It's like, I think it's called a Lion King. Okay, take a minute and stretch. You guys are getting distracted. You have 30 minutes. Stand up and stretch. Or turn around and take some minutes. I mean, 30 seconds. Yeah. You have 30 seconds. All right. Make sure you say hello to somebody so you can stop looking at them during class. All right, back to your seat now. Thank you. All right, let's pick this back up. And if you guys make sure you're writing down something for yourself, this is good information. I tried to make it as simplest as I could. Evolution has a lot of vocabulary. All right, so speciation. Well, speciation just means making a species. That's pretty simple. But there's many different ways to make species or how species evolve. Now, me personally, I'm not going to make another species, okay? But the evolution of species, it just means change over time. And if they change so much, eventually, if humans change so much, they're not going to be called humans anymore. They're going to be called humans 2.0, okay? Some other species that has evolved from our current characteristics of humans. So eventually, when things evolve so much, usually the organisms, humans 2.0, they're not going to be able to breed with humans 1.0, okay? We're going to be so different that if we tried to breed, our offspring would either die, the body, like the female body would probably abort the fetus because it's like, this isn't normal, I don't know what this mess is, okay? So the genes are not the same, or it's going to be impossible for them to reproduce. Maybe humans 2.0 develop a whole different reproductive system. Maybe they just look at each other and they reproduce. I mean, there'd have to be a mutual stare. It would be a mutual. I'm just saying, stop looking at each other, guys. Stop looking at each other. Okay, so, you with me? I know, weird example. So members cannot interbreed. You guys ready? Stop looking at me. Okay, species cannot interbreed successfully, which means a new species has to have formed. They can actually not be able to interbreed because they just can't reach each other. If they're geographically separated, that means they can't interbreed, right? Like you're not going to cross a big river and go, I want that lady over there. Okay? So this is one example. This is one example of how speciation can occur. Geographic isolation. That kind of makes sense when you read it. Geographic isolation. What has the geography done? Separated, isolated two different organisms, and then eventually they evolved into two different species. Okay, good example, this first image up here, no river or stream. This image here, river, stream, canyon, kind of like the Grand Canyon, for example. Those species on either side start to develop their own kind of characteristics. So notice that all the trees up here were all dark green, so they were dark green species. And then down here, we have two different examples, light green trees and dark green trees. So those are two different species that have evolved over time after that geographic isolation thing happened. What would be another example of geographic isolation? I have a stream here. What's something else? What natural disaster, natural event could occur? Okay, Pangea, the plate tectonics moving, what'd you say? A huge valley forming. What else? Say it again? Oh, earthquakes, faults, volcanic eruptions, oceans was what I was looking for. Okay, so this is just another example. I have a picture on the bottom here. So right now, these genes, these populations, you see how they can go back and forth? Genes can flow back and forth. They can move from place to place A to place B. But if you put a big geographic barrier, like a volcanic eruption or something like that, magma's flowing through, they start to become they vary a little bit, and then over time, they vary a lot of it, so they've become two different species. And then now if I try to reintroduce them to each other, maybe the volcanic magma's gone, They don't even look alike. They're not going to go breed with another species because they can't. They can't make successful babies. Okay, and here's a good example. The image on the left, you guys, has the big peninsula kind of landform in the middle of two oceans. And in this image over here, this is the Grand Canyon. And they've made there's two different species of squirrels on the left and right side of the canyon. They look really similar, but they're not the same species. They can't make successful babies. Yes, ma'am.
So, do you think that's the reason why, like, well, maybe, like, not scientifically, but I mean, like, so, like, some of right and some of
Definitely. That's
like,
this 100. It's not different species exactly,
well,
because we could still introduce.
Like,
Yeah, but it supports the variations of characteristics. All that happened was Pangea was one big continent, huge continent. We all could gene flow and interbreed. We were all approximately the same skin color, hair color, body weight, very, very similar. But whenever Pangea separated and different continents could form, there was a huge ocean in the middle. So people on one continent, continent A, started to resemble each other, but people on continent B, when they started to, maybe they had a really hot environment, or people on continent A had a really cold environment. They showed evolution because they adapted to their environment, and so then in the end, people looked really different. But now we know that because we can actually travel to and from continents and we can see the differences. That's the only reason people look different now, since Pangea broke apart. Darn plate tectonics. We could all have been exactly the same. Darn. Okay. Here are some more theories on speciation. So we just write down geographic isolation is one version of how species form. Here are two more. Species can form gradually. That theory is called gradualism. Write that down. Or species can form in a way called punctuated equilibrium. So these are some pieces of information, and sketch the graphs for yourself for later as well. So we already know species form, but sometimes we're not sure how fast they form. Is it like we get one new species a year? We get one new species every 10,000 years? Do we get 15 new species, really fast at one time and then no more species for the next 100,000 years? It's just saying how fast do they form. That's what this rate of speciation means. You with me? You're distracting me. So this first example here shows slow and steady winds the race. I can't speak today. And every now and then, gradually, one new species appears. One, maybe at 100 years, and another at 200 years, and another at 300 years. It's just one every now and then. Very gradual. This one's kind of a constant environment. Nothing crazy is happening in the environment. Just one new species forms every couple hundred years. Okay, punctuated is like, exclamation point, boom, something happens. And then you have equilibrium. Equilibrium is just kind of equal and stagnant. That graph looks very different. So this one is where a lot of species evolve really, really fast, and then nothing happens for 1,000 years. Nothing. It's still, it's constant, okay? So a rapid change followed by stability. You can see this rapid change followed by stability, rapid change followed by stability, rapid change followed by stability. The stable environment is what's going to be happening at these stable moments. Nothing crazy is happening in the environment. It's pretty chill, okay? Whenever the rapid equilibrium occurs, it's probably because of some drastic change in the environment. What happened right before the dinosaurs became extinct? A meteor hit a meteor hit the KYYK, whatever the Yucatan something line. I can't remember what it is. So it hit, and a bunch of species died. But then right after that, other organisms took their place. So we had a lot of species forming at once. So it's usually due to some environmental catastrophe. So make sure you know that you relate the rapid change with catastrophe. Something happens, species die, new species are formed, and then stability, and then on and on and on. So you could compare and contrast gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. Yes, yes? Somewhat, maybe you could identify a graph, right? Yes. The graph, I think, would be easy. Just remember that punctuated equilibrium, there's a, exclamation point, boom, something happens, okay? Punctuation. That means that something, a catastrophe has occurred. Okay, cool. This one is my favorite because it's back to Darwin's beaks. We already know about this one. Now we're going to put a name to it. You already knew, I'll scroll down to the picture first. You already knew there was one species of finch that flew to the Galapagos Islands. But then that one finch made babies. Those babies had some variations. Those variations allowed for them to act in a different way or have a different role on the different parts of the island. So some of them were able to eat insects within nectar with their long beaks. Some of them were just insect eaters. Some of them were seed eaters, just nectar. So they all filled a different niche. Now, look at that. That said radiation. What's radiation mean, by the way?
Like,
Radiation, anybody?
I think it's a little hard to
What does the sun do?
regularize.
Radiates onto you, right? It's just, it's the sunshines are radiating everywhere. It's a big spread of sunlight. That's what this is showing. It's radiating everywhere, a big spread of adaptations to their environments. So that's why this phrase adaptive radiation kind of symbolizes what it sounds like what it's showing. It's showing a single ancestral species, so just a single species, radiating and adapting to many, 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 many different roles in this environment. So it goes into an array, which just means many, spread out different species. But that cannot occur unless there are different niches to fill. You can't make 15 different species of birds for one seed type. There has to be 15 different sources of food. So there has to be a diverse number of niches or diverse habitats if that's going to occur. Otherwise, what happened yesterday when you guys were trying to all eat the same food source at the same time? Competition. Some birds, they're not going to make it. You know, the weak ones, they're not going to be able to fight back against the big billed, chopstick birds or the tweezer birds. The clothespins, I don't know, they might win, but if they don't have enough niches to fill, the competition rules and then some birds die out. Thumbs up when you're done here. All right, give me another second. I got a couple people writing here. All right, guys, we got like 4 more slides. Good. Okay, next type of way that species has formed. So the first one we said was, second one now. We did geographic isolation, we did adaptive radiation, now we've got divergent and then convergent evolution. And these kind of sound like they mean what they sound like. What does diverge mean? No, diverge, think two.
Separate.
Right, diverge means you go diverge like a fork in a road. Okay, you have 2 different paths you can take. And that's exactly what's happening. So looking at my butterfly here, this one common species, and then they form into 2 separate species over time. The reason they evolve into 2 different species though is because there's 2 different environments. So they are adapting to different environments. This doesn't have to be just 2 different environments. It can be many. But the example here on this butterfly, maybe there are birds, and the birds only like, birds only eat medium butterflies. Okay? If the birds only like the medium ones because they're the tastiest, what other varieties of butterflies will survive?
The large ones.
Large ones and the small ones, right? The medium ones, are they going to survive? No, because the birds are going to eat them. So there's 2 different niches to fill. The birds will not eat the large ones, so they survive and they'll kind of do their own flower thing. And the small ones will survive and they'll work with other types of flowers or other maybe, like sunflowers versus tulips. And so they have 2 different niches to fill, so they're adapting to 2 different versions of an environment. Another example, we've already talked about homologous tetrapod limb. You've got the same structure, but different functions. So we've got the bird that flies, the horse that walks, the human that, uses their arms for stretching lifting. So it's another example of divergent evolution. We form different types of species, but with the same internal structures. Okay, what do you think? If divergent means to separate due to two different environments, what do you think convergent means?
To bring together.
Now, come together, that means, for evolution, does that mean they have a similar trait or they have different traits? Similar, okay, so convergent definitely means similar traits. Now, they evolve these similar traits. So distance, this is a kind of a wordy one. Distantly related organisms evolve similarly. They evolve similarly, not because they're related. They are not related, like, at all, okay? They're like 14th, 15th cousins, okay? They're like way, way, way far apart. But the reason they can evolve similar traits is because they're exposed to similar things. So they occupy a similar environment or similar niche. I think we've got a picture and then like one more slide after this. You're doing great. Thank you. So my best example of this is what we've already talked about. Are butterflies and birds. Are they even related? Like really, 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 really far back, but not closely at all. Insects versus a, what is the bird called?
Yeah.
It's not the bird family, it's the avid. Avid? I think it's an avid family. Anyway, so two different families of organisms, and they are not related at all, but they evolve a similar structure. Similar structure means that they have wings. One second. Example, wings. And they have a similar function. Yes, ma'am?
Since everything has a name, what are we called?
We're mammals. Yeah, we're in the mammal family, and we're going to get into that next week, too. Because, like, dogs have they're a cananidid, like canine family. Cats are feline family. We're in the mammal category, but we're the hominids. Okay, so looking at these structures, at these animals, which animals do you think have evolved similar structures?
The anteater.
Which one? The spiny anteater. So both. Let's scroll down. Watch. We did anteaters first. So you're saying these two guys evolved similar features? What's the feature? Long nose. Okay, so long nose here, long nose here. They are not related, and yeah, and the claws too. They're not related at all, okay? This one lives in South America, this one lives in Oceania, which is like way, way, way far away. They're not related at all. But they've evolved this due to a similar environment. So what do you think their environment's like if they evolved like that?
Warm and cold.
So holes, okay, not holy like praise Jesus, but holy because it's got holes in it. Why would you say it's got holes in the environment? Okay, so they eat the ants from holes or from like trees, okay? That's what I mean by similar environment. So then these other guys have evolved a similar structure as well. What is it?
The armor.
The armor. This darn timer. Okay, so they've evolved a similar back. Well, why would that be beneficial to them? What are they both experiencing?
Protection against the rodents.
Against the roads or harsh weather, predators. So they both have similar predators that try to eat them, or conditions that maybe would hurt their like fragile skin. So they have the armor to protect them. So that they've endured a similar environment as well. Okay, so look at the puppies. Okay, all of these dogs, are they the same species?
No.
Yes, they are.
I mean, yeah.
Species, the definition of species just means that you can make offspring, and the offspring are going to be fertile. They can make more offspring. Can all dogs reproduce with one another? Yeah, they technically can. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, Great Dane and Chihuahua, but it can technically happen, right? All right, so these are all the same species. Now, are they the same subspecies? No, we have Rottweilers, Great Danes, Chihuahuas, Yorkies, Terriers, blah, 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 blah. So all those names of dogs, those are called subspecies. but they are all part of the same species. That's just to reinforce what species means. So what's the definition of species? Population that can make fertile offspring. Thank you. They have to reproduce and make fertile offspring. Good job. Okay, don't write this down. We already talked about this. So we've been talking this whole time about natural selection. Nature doing the selection. Nature saying who survives and who doesn't, who's the fittest and who's not. Artificial selection, who's playing a hand? Humans, us. We get to say, oh, that turkey, I want that turkey for Thanksgiving because it's got the biggest breast. Okay, big breasted turkeys. Now, humans have to do that because we want to make sure we produce enough food. That is not something nature would normally allow for. This turkey, this poor turkey, he can't even get around. Somebody's got to pick him up and go bring him to the hen house and go talk to all the ladies. Okay, he can't do that by himself. And he's very top heavy. Okay, so he can't move around very well. Nature would probably select against that, right? Because do you think he's very fast?
No.
All right, what do you think is going to happen to him then?
He's very
Go
good.
back.
So some predator is going to go, you look tasty, and going to eat him. So nature would not select for that. But humans artificially do select for that because we want the meat there. Okay? So we do this with dogs a lot. If we want a dog that's not going to shed, tons of hair, we're going to select for a specific breed of dog so that we can have that desired trait. Or if you want a dog that doesn't, that lives longer, you want to breed it with a small dog because small dogs live longer than large dogs. If you want a dog that doesn't bark as much, you probably tend towards larger dogs because little dogs bark a lot. So you have to vary it. But humans have a role in this. We commonly don't select traits that are good for them naturally. So is it good for us to release maybe animals that we've bred into the wild?
No.
No, because we've probably destroyed their likelihood of surviving. Okay, so like turtles and stuff like that, you don't release them into the wild. Okay.
Wait, what?
Because they're not used to searching for their own food. Stuff like that. They don't. Yeah, like if you have a turtle for a long period of time, you feed them all the time, right? They're not used to hunting and finding their own food, so they have to teach themselves that. So it's generally good to release them in a small environment where they can kind of learn how to behave, and then maybe like a year later in a larger environment, but not immediately to like the local pond. Like, peace, good luck.
Sweet star. Die.
Probably if they tried to do it on their own first. Yes.
Turtles like long time.
Long time, not forever. Yeah. Okay, stand and stretch, and I'm going to tell you guys what I need you to do. You can see it on the board, but I'm going to get the laptop.
I think it's gonna live forever.
Perfect timing. I said 45 minutes.
That's not even possible.
Here's what we need. You guys have your webcast papers. I have a couple more counts out. Now, these laptops, listen for me, they're mostly 90% put up correctly. I will have to yell at the teacher because it's not exactly up like that. But they all should be charged mostly. You guys can grab a laptop, so I'm just going to leave them open. If you have not gone through part 1 of the web question, you need to finish that first. Then you're going to finish part 2 of the web question. Remember where it is. On my website. Unit documents, yes. Okay, so go and grab a laptop. After that, there's time to start in the back. Oh, let me call her. Just use the number she's trying to tell me. Let me call her.
I'm just like.
We'll go get one. Are you being lazy?
very much.
That's what a nice American citizen does for each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was
Oh, yeah.
Alright, you guys know where to go. I'll pull it up here in case you don't. Afterwards, there are little activity cards at the back, and I'll help you guys get there whenever you get there.